Today I'm going to be resuming a project that I've been working on for about a week, off and on. I've made 3 bottle openers to resemble an owl. I often get up early around here. My dog, Duchess, German Shepherd, she wakes me up 5 a.m. every morning, wants to go outside. And when I go outside, I often hear an owl, or when I go on walks, I often hear that an owl hooting. Where I live in the United States, we've got a great variety of birds, and I just love birds: owls, hawks, eagles. Well, I love the cool birds anyway. So this was my first attempt. All right, it's very flat, very one-dimensional. My punch that I made to punch the eye sockets, my first attempt, didn't go so well. The proof is in the pudding, right? My eyes aren't that great. That's actually one of my biggest challenges in smithing, welding, working with my hands, is I have a hard time seeing. So I tried to make this punch. I don't know if you can make that out. There's basically it's the reverse of that, and it still needs some work. Okay, but I use this punch to punch the eyeballs. But it gives the effect, right? So the first 2, I used this stock here. Now this is just 1 inch by, what's this, 3/16 wall, okay? I have metric here. 1 inch is about 25 millimeters by about 4 millimeters. For the first 2, they're owls that don't get to eat a lot. All right, not very substantial. Then I found just a scrap piece of mild steel. This one is a little wider. This is 1 1/8. And then I cut it to, I don't know, about 2.5 inches before I started forging this particular version. And so here's my progression. I've chiseled in these lines to look like wings, okay? And I've chiseled in this line here and here. I forgot to do it here, to look like a snout, and then the eyes. And I put the catch here. Well, here are the talons. So I put the catch here. I suppose I could, if I punched the bottle cap opener slot a little deeper into the stock, I could put the catch on the bottom. And I think I'll do that. I think it's a little awkward to try and open up a beer bottle where the catch is right in the middle. None of these, by the way, work particularly well. This one works. None of the rest of them really work. So I might have to punch this down a little bit more. But it's more of a novelty item, right? Another progression is this was quite flat, whereas I allowed this to curl up. And I quite like that. I quite like that. And then when forging here, it's got quite pointy ears, and I beveled them down, and here I just let the punch kind of create the shape of the face. So today's work is, I like this material more. I don't have 1 1/8 material, but I do have a lot of these. What are these called? This is used on railways when they're putting the rails, the ties, putting it all together. This is some kind of keeper. I don't know what it is. If someone knows the proper name of this, put it in the comments. I've seen it on the tracks, and I've seen videos of them using it. And my neighbor, who's a train guy, retired from the industry, told me what it's called, but I can't remember. So my eyesight's gone, and I have poor memory. I really do. I have a hard time even being coherent. sometimes. So this stock This stock is about 7/8 of an inch, okay, but it's a lot thicker. 7/8 equating to 23 millimeters. It's about 9 mil thick, or what is that, 5/16 thick. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to forge this flatter, and I'm hoping I get it nice and hot. I think I'm going to chop this off and just not deal with the bent part, but I'm going to get it nice and hot, and then press it flat. I'll set my 50-ton Big Blue press to 1/4 of an inch, and just press it flat and just let it expand as it wants to, and we'll take care of the rest in the forging. I'm hoping by doing that, this is quite rusted, that it'll flatten this out just a bit. This is my Big Blue 50-ton press. When I was trying to decide what kind of heavy equipment I wanted in the shop, I considered buying this, or considered buying either the small or the medium air hammer, power hammer, and there are pros and cons to both. I've been very pleased with this. In the best scenario, I would have both, but I had a fixed amount of money that I was budgeting. I had about 10 grand that I was budgeting for this, and now you can't even look at it for that. They're more. I think they're 12 or 13 grand. But it's been a great press. Some of the features that I really like on it. Well, first of all, I don't know if you caught that. It is pedal actuated. Okay. So you press that, tilt that forward. It was kind of odd at the beginning, but it's pedal actuated. It's powered by these two hydraulic rams, and then the interesting part is right here. I mean, this is the part we care about, right? Setting up my dies, and I'm gonna have to switch these out here. Right now I've got this, excuse me, I'm doing a lot of drawing and flattening, and these are quite worn. I made these out of mild steel because I had the material about a year ago, and even though they're mild steel, I tried to case harden them. Even though they're mild steel, they are great, and I'll dress them up with a flat disc every once in a while to make sure at least this operation is smooth. And it's been a good die setup. Down the road, I'll definitely do it in S7 or H13 or something. Probably S7 to give it more durability. So yeah, these were fabricated. These were fabricated in-house. So you just saw me remove that. It's pretty easy. There are two pins that hold the bottom die in, and then there's this latch here that holds the top die in. I will say that it's not precise. They've got layers of this. Boy, that's pretty thick steel. They got layers of this steel, and this center layer is a little higher. So the dies will rock this way a little bit, which has its advantages. And because it has dual rams, this can shift. Right, this whole setup, it's so powerful. It can't a little bit here. Can't. That doesn't make sense. But this whole assembly can just ever so slightly shift. So with my drawing die, right, if I'm flattening too far on this side, I'll see the whole die want to come up this way. And that's also in the die as much as it, I mean, this isn't moving that much. But there is play, okay? Alright, so let's put these top and bottom dies in. These are the dies that I asked for when I bought the machine from Big Blue. I believe it's 3 inch by 2 inch, I think. And these are hardened S7. And even hardened S7 is going to leave some marks. Accidentally, I used some tooling in here that had a hardened end, and I put marks in my blocks. the right answer would be to take this to a surface grinder with coolant and skim that, and it would be nice and smooth again. And I wouldn't hurt the hardness. I wouldn't hurt the hardness. Okay, so I've got these in here. It's going to get a little noisy, but now I want to adjust this to about 1/4 of an inch, and that's where these come in. Okay, this on the side here, let me give you a look real quick. On the side here we've got these limit switches. Okay, when this steel tab hits this limit switch, okay, it's going to stop traveling up, and vice versa. When it hits this switch, this big ram will stop going down. Look straight. Okay. Alright, so for example, let's go ahead and turn this on. We'll put this all the way down with that selector, and we've got this much room to forge in. So I've got over 8 inches, 8 3/4 inches of travel. I don't ever need that. But if you had a tool up here, right, and your piece was here, this comes in handy. Now I'm going to use the foot pedal to go all the way up. Okay, so that hit the top limit switch, and I'll go ahead and measure this. I'm going to use the piece of material that I liked before as sort of a gauge block. So I need to come up a little bit. So now I'm going to adjust this top. Okay? The farther I move it up here, the closer this block will get to that block. So, excuse me, I'm going to be in the camera here, but well, let me move it. So let's move this up just a little bit. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. This can move pretty quickly. You loosen this up and then you're up an inch. So you got to be careful with it. And then in the meantime, I'm going to move this up as far as it'll go without impacting the other switch and lock that in. Because otherwise this bottom die would keep coming down every time, and I don't need it to. So at this point, it's just a matter of fiddling. Turn it on, see where it is, measure it, and adjust the limit switch. That is actually, I think that's perfect. First try. A little play on that side, little play. Maybe a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to take the stock that I just cut off and make sure and compare. So that'll just, you know, I'm going to raise it up just a hair. So I raise it up just a hair because I want to make sure that I improve as much as I can the surface finish of this, because I don't really want to. That's too much. And now the fiddling starts. Okay, I'm going to get this where I want it and I'll bring it back. It's always easier with the camera off. So I've got this where I want it now. Okay, it barely slides in here. Yeah, when this die goes up, so I'm glad I did adjust that. Okay, let's get some steel hot and squish it. me heat this up and do that one more time. Okay, that wasn't too hard, right? So, we've achieved our thickness, width that I wanted. That's the proper width. However, it's still a little proud. This is still a little thicker than this, but that's why I love blacksmithing. This isn't machining. This isn't precision. So I like the width. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this at the TW90, my belt grinder, and I'm just going to dress these edges. I've got some indentations when I was flattening it out. Just something that's quick to do on the belt grinder, and then I don't have to worry about when forging. I suppose it might just clean itself up when forging, but the nicer the stock you start with, then the nicer or the easier it is to forge, alright? So let's do that. I need an apron. This is gonna throw sparks. So that grinder really makes quick work. So we've got stock to work with, and now it is very close to the thickness. Still probably, I don't know, I'd say about 100 thou, right around 100 thou, 0.1 inches proud still, but that's okay. Now, the original stock that I started with, actually this might be, it might have been 2 1/4 inches, and then it just stretches out, right? Everything grows. Each time you forge the catch, you forge the eyes, you cut and drift this circle, everything grows. So I think it was 2 1/4 to make all 3 of these. For this next one, I'm gonna cut it at 2 1/2. Okay, so let's increase this to half. I'm gonna cut it 2 1/2, and then I'm going to adjust my setup to where instead of cutting my slot about 1/4 inch from the bottom, I'll just move that and cut it about 1/2 inch from the bottom. And we'll see if that gives me enough room to put this piece here, this catch, down there at the bottom. I don't know if that'll improve or take away from the character of the existing face, but hey, we'll find out. That's why I'm out here playing. So, I'm going to mark cut, heat, and then I'll meet you back at the fly press for this punch operation. We're going to put in a rectangular punch in preparation to drift the hole. All right, before I move on, I'm going to have to adjust my punch for bottle openers. This is currently how I have it set up, and it punches about that far, well, about 1/4 inch away from this back plate. And this is specifically for so this is what it looks like. I've got a little indentation there as a stop, and then this acts as a catch. So when you're clearing the punch, you know, the part has a tendency of raising up a bit, but you know, we don't need it. So I'm going to pull this, and then I've marked this here. I put a little prick punch. I don't know if you can make that out. Right here. And that's about 1/2 inch from the edge of this to here. So I'm going to locate this visually at the end of this punch, this far end. Lower this down, and then I'll put a little mark, and then I'll punch it. I'll punch it again on this side and use that as a visual marker to know how far deep I need to go before I punch that. It's all very analog, very by hand, but that's blacksmithing sometimes, right? Okay, so let's try this. Try to get it centered like there. Let's move this camera so you get a better angle. Oops. Right. Right about there, right? Am I there? Right about there. Okay, so that looks good. And I'm going to locate this with this little marker. And I want to put it just inside here. I want the punch to go away. This center finding punch mark to go away after I punch this. Almost going out of enough room. Right about there. I made a mess of that, but there she blows. That worked well. And for this setup, I've rigged up this little block. I can set it here like this or like this up above to keep this fly press out of my work just temporarily. So right there, I've got the block set there, And then when I need to forge, I just remove that and go to work. To give you an idea of how much quicker this is than the propane forge, I'll show you me heating this up right now. "30 seconds in here." Boy, it seems to be equivalent to 4 or 5 minutes in the propane forge. To heat up this entire piece, you know, I paused the camera, but that took some time, 5-10 minutes. See? Now if the material is greater than 1/2 inch, I'll pull it out and I'll let it soak a little bit. Try to get an even heat through all the material. But for something like this, I can get it to the temperature I want, take it out, and go drift it. Take another heat. This is pretty thick stuff. One more heat should do it. This is still hot. Okay, so I thought I'd stop and own up to my own mistakes. Yes, I already cooled this off. You know, this went quite well, and the drift I use, it's not round. It's what I found at a tag sale or something, and I just use it, and it works. But here's my mistake. I have a perfectly good piece of steel that, you know, 14 inches long, and I cut it at 2.5 before I started all this operations. Next time I do something like that, I'll leave it long, and then I'll have a handle. I really struggled here, as you saw. I couldn't hold it with my tongs and keep it parallel with the surface of the anvil because it's such a small workpiece. So next time, I will forge this part and then cut it off for the next operations. My duh moment of the day.
I don't like how this part turned out, so I'm going to file it a little bit. Whoops.
So here is the finished product. I have to say, these were very straightforward and easy to do. Just the shape and everything was natural. This was the only one I've done so far, but I fought with it a little bit. But I think, like I said before, if I leave the stock long and then cut it later, I'll be better off. So the difference between this and this is, again, the catch is down here instead of here. And I think that will make it easier, give you a little bit more leverage to pop a bottle top. This one was very centered, and it didn't catch every time. These, they're just too flimsy, so they're out. I don't like that material. So it's a lot beefier. Boy, now I know what I'm going to use those railroad tie keeper clip thingies for. I really like that a lot. So, I think I'll end by just kind of pointing out some of the tools I used in this process. I know I've been long-winded, so I'm just going to stick with it. You know, other than your basic sledge and forging hammer, I used a prick punch, okay? And a prick punch is for placement of when you want to be very specific with where you want to put a center punch. So you can use that's a smaller punch, and it's spring actuated, so it leaves a little bit of a prick after it's done. And then you can follow up with a regular punch if you need to have it more substantial. So I used a prick punch. I used a regular center punch. This one's a little dull. I've got 4 or 5 of these that I just cycle through because they dull so quickly. We saw before, this punch was for the eyeballs, okay? And I simply did that by, I repurposed, again, this was a yard sale find giveaway. I made this very early on in forging, so my taper is just horrendous. You learn as you go, right? But then I flattened the top here. I started with a drill and then used some Dremel, a Dremel carbide accessory and some Dremel sanding bits to get that smooth.
This is another early tool that I made out of S7. I've got it forged here for indexing. Okay, and then the tip here is just round. I've only dressed this once, so this S7 really has stood the test of time. And this was again used to forge this catch. Then for the eyeballs, I used this old ball peen hammer. The handle's always been loose, but that lends itself to, I've never used it as a forming tool, but I used it to make the eyeballs. I find it easier to locate where I want to start the eyeballs, and then secondly, I find it easier to hit such a small tool with the sledge to make those impressions. And as I did that, you know, I'll place one and then the other one really overlaps and it creates a smaller ridge here. You know, these are, the outside of these eyes are taller than the inside, so they kind of overlap a little bit. And then when I did the eye punch, I tried to get it lower and left to kind of make it look, I don't know, introspective, cross-eyed maybe. And then for the talons and the wings, I may have done those backwards, I don't know. I used this tool. This is out of spring steel, out of a I think it was a 1962, early 60s F100. A guy a few miles away that I know, he redid that, repainted it, put new suspension in, so he gave me his coils from his front suspension, as well as his leaf springs, which I haven't cut into yet. So I made that out of there and did my best at heat treating this. This one, I heat treated the tip, let this hot and let the colors run, and then did a final quench. And again, I've only dressed this once. It's held up pretty well. Cheap tool, nothing really. And then finally, this is another one of those, I do a lot of yard sale, flea market things. You know, it was probably $1 for a taped up bundle of tools. And I got 3 of these in the bundle, and I use them for all sorts of things. There you go. So those are the tools. Well, I certainly learned a lot in this process, and hopefully you did too. If you have a preference, let me know. This one's certainly easier to do with the catch up on top, but the more I look at this other one, the more I kind of like it. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one.